We throw the word culture around all the time, but what are we really talking about when we say it? It turns out the way most of us think about it, well, it might be more than just incomplete. It might actually be a little bit dangerous. So let's tear it down and rebuild it. So let me ask you, when you hear that word culture, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Seriously, what's the image you see? For a lot of us, it's probably something like this, right? Grand museums, fancy art galleries, maybe the sound of a symphony. This is what people often call high culture. The stuff that's supposed to be for the sophisticated and highly educated. Or maybe we think of it as a trait. A cultured person is someone who's read all the classics, has a PhD, or maybe just has a lot of money. But here's the thing. That's just one tiny and frankly pretty misleading piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with what we think culture is, and then we're going to blow that definition wide open. We'll get into the whole myth of some cultures being better than others, see why that's such a dangerous idea, and then bring it all back to how culture shows up in our everyday lives. Okay, so let's dig into that common idea of culture first, the one that's all about high art and fancy degrees. See, the real problem with this view is that it sets up this social pyramid. It whispers that some people have culture, while others, well, they just don't. And that's not just wrong, it's really divisive. It's how we end up looking down on people who live simpler lives, thinking they're uncultured, just because they don't fit into this narrow elitist box. So if culture isn't just about art galleries and expensive concert tickets, then what in the world is it? It's time for a major upgrade to our definition. To really get it, we've got to go back to the source. The word culture actually comes from the Latin word cultivar, which means to cultivate the land, to plant seeds, to help things grow. Right away, that tells you something crucial. Culture is about development and nurturing, not just admiring stuff on a wall. And that brings us to the real deal definition from the anthropologist Edward Tyler. And listen to this, because it's a total game changer. Culture is that complex whole. It's everything. Knowledge, beliefs, art, morals, laws, customs, literally any habit you pick up just by being part of a group. It's like the entire social operating system for human beings. So here's the absolute key takeaway. Culture is not a thing you have, like a car or a degree. It's something you learn. It's a shared programming you download just by existing in a community. You absorb it from the moment you're born. This idea leads us to a huge, and I mean huge, shift in how we see the world, moving from the idea of one big culture, with a capital C, to the idea of many, many cultures, plural. Okay, so for a long, long time, this view on the left was dominant. It said culture equals civilization, and it was basically a ladder. It put certain societies, usually European ones, at the very top as civilized, and everyone else was somewhere below, labeled backward. But then thinkers like Franz Boas came along and just blew that whole ladder apart. His pluralistic view says, no, every society has its own complete and valid culture. There is no ladder, there's no hierarchy, there's just difference. So why does this matter so much? Why is ditching that ladder so critical? Because that old way of thinking isn't just wrong, it's actively harmful. And that brings us to a really dangerous idea called ethnocentrism. So what is ethnocentrism? It's what happens when we use our own culture as the default setting, as the yardstick to judge everybody else. It's that little voice in our head that says, well, our way of doing things is the normal way, the right way. And this is where it gets really serious. Judging another group by your own rulebook isn't just being a little closed-minded, it is the very root of prejudice and racism. It's saying your values matter more than theirs, without even trying to understand where they're coming from. All right, that was some heavy stuff, so let's bring it all down to earth. Let's look at how this whole culture thing actually plays out in real life. Because once you start looking, I promise, you're going to see it absolutely everywhere. Just think about this for a second. How do you know how to act at a funeral? Nobody hands you an instruction manual at the door, but you know to be quiet and respectful. That's a cultural script. And on the flip side, you know you don't show up to the beach in a three-piece suit. Why? Because it's culturally out of place. These unwritten rules are culture in action. And culture is never just one thing, even inside a single country. Just look at Brazil. There isn't one Brazilian culture. It's this incredible mosaic of so many. I mean, just in music alone, you've got samba, funk, forró, sertanejo, the list goes on and on. It's this beautiful, diverse soundscape. And what's even wilder is that you can see this diversity inside a single city. The music blasting in one neighborhood can be totally different from the music you'll hear just a few streets over. And each one is an equally real, equally important expression of culture. Okay, so after all of that, what's the one big idea you should walk away with? It really boils down to a powerful but pretty simple change in perspective. First things first, there is no such thing as a better or worse culture. Period. This isn't just some nice feel-good idea. It has to be our starting point for everything. And if there's no better or worse, then that means there can't be any superior or inferior cultures either. That latter we talked about, it's a total myth. We have to tear it down in our own minds. Because when you get rid of that latter, you see the world as it really is. There are only different cultures, and each one is its own complete, brilliant, and valuable way of being human. Each one is a whole world unto itself. So I'll leave you with this question. Knowing all this, what's one practical thing you can do, starting today, to better see and respect the countless, incredible cultures that are all around you, right now? How can we put this knowledge into action?